So, like I said, this is the Sunday of the Transfiguration. And this is the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, and this will be according to St. Luke. Glory to you, Lord Christ. Everybody got their crash helmets on? Seat belts fastened? Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. Now while he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. And then, from the cloud, came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. Now on the next day, when they came down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. And just then a man from the crowd shouted, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He's only a child." Suddenly, a spirit seized him, and all at once he shrieks. It convulses him until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. And Jesus said, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear you? Bring your son here." And while he was coming, the demon dashed him to the ground in convulsion. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God. It's funny about the Transfiguration. I think I've shared before that one of the first things I do, not the first thing, but when I begin my work on a given gospel text, I go up on YouTube and see if there is any cinematic rendition of the scene portrayed in the gospel. And we did this for most recently the wedding of Cana. Remember that? We showed the wedding of Cana from the new TV series, The Chosen, and also from The Chosen, the story of the great catch of fish. Remember the story of the great? And they make great cinematic. And you would think that an episode like the Transfiguration, any cinematic director would say, "Let me at it." And none of them do. I mean, there's only one YouTube video of the Transfiguration, and it's so cheesy, it's so awful, that there's no way that I could show it to you because it's just so awful. I mean, it doesn't portray any of the things that the story says that it's intended to portray. And, the scholars themselves, nobody's really to say, here's what it is. Nobody really knows where it was. There's a lot of debate about Tabor, Mount Hermon, for the pilgrims that have gone there for maybe, I don't know. I mean, Mount Tabor was really established firmly as a pilgrimage site only about, 700 years after Jesus. Before then, it was just a story without a place. But they had to figure out a decision had to be made. Well, where are we going to say it was? And then a lot of people debate about what part of the Jesus story was actually in. Because it makes a lot more sense that it's a post-resurrection appearance story than a middle of the ministry story. With the cloud and the voices and the radiant face and, the whole thing. And then there's debate about, well, maybe this came out of a Greek tradition where gods and humanity, there's a lot of funny stuff that goes on. Bright lights and cinematics, mythology. Maybe it's a rendition of that. I don't know. Nobody knows. But it's an interesting story. It comes at an interesting time in the story of Jesus. And everything, is kind of going one way. And then it goes another way. I guess they call that a watershed moment. And, in the story, Jesus and the group have been in Caesarea Philippi, and Jesus says to the group, who do you say that I am? And, of course, they don't know what to say, so they give him the guppy look. And it's Peter. Peter says, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus says, bingo. The Spirit has told you this, and so forth. So that's happened. And then the Transfiguration. And here's the way to look at the Transfiguration. This is Sinai. Sinai happened for Moses. Transfiguration happened for Jesus. Moses takes 3. Jesus takes 3. Shining radiance, shining radiance. Information, information. Sinai, Transfiguration. Every single word in the story walks and comes right out of the Old Testament. Right out of the Old Testament. I mean, it's a story that people would have said, wow, we remember when that happened. And now this? It's tough to shift a crowd. It's tough. It's tough to shift especially a religious crowd. I mean, when you think the world is one way and somebody else is telling you, well, you have a tendency to be skeptical. And so stories like this were determining. But, you had the beginning of the ministry, and wouldn't it have been fun? I mean, come on. Hanging with Jesus in the first couple of years of his ministry, healing, teaching, popularity. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a celebrity? Who wouldn't want everybody to want to spend time and listen to you? I mean, this is the stuff that was born for social media. I wonder how many hits Jesus would have had. And it would have been fun, really. Those were coattails I would have wanted to hang on to. That's a wagon I would have jumped on. You and me, Jesus, all the way. But, like I said, here's what's going to happen, kids. It's going to end up in tears. It is. It is. Because where we're going now, we're going to Jerusalem. And man, instead of wanting to get close, be better if you were just as far away as you could possibly be. Yeah. So Moses and Elijah, the law of the prophets, they're all talking about it. Well, you're going to Jerusalem, huh? Okay. I get it. And so we had this mountaintop experience and the radiance and all that. And what's interesting, and one of the commentaries said this, what's interesting is that this was the first time that Moses and Elijah, who were heavenly beings, these were, heavenly beings, were seeing Jesus as a human being. And it was also the first time that Peter, James, and John were seeing Jesus as a divine being. So you've got a little bit of an identity going, from both directions. Human, finally, for Moses and Elijah. Ooh, Jesus, looking good, man. I've only known you as the Christ. And Peter, James, and John, give me some sunglasses, dude. You're God. And, God bless the disciples. God bless the way that they were written in the story. They don't get it. Way over their heads. Way over their heads. They don't get it. Well, we better build 3 tents. This is a response, a generic response on the part of a human being. Now, all of you, I know, have had mountaintop experiences. Information has come to you from a place that you don't completely understand, but you got it. You got it. And I don't care if it's a magnificent sunset on the Pacific Ocean, if it's, gazing over the mustard of the Napa Valley, beauty unparalleled. Something has broken into your heart and said, this is big. This is big. This is like a mountain top. And again, we're reluctant to share these with each other. We think we're a little crazy ourselves. Couldn't have happened. Maybe it was. Speculate about that. It was funny. I remember years ago, Oprah saying that, about 80% of the population has had a mystical experience. Some kind of voice has broken in. Something has happened that it couldn't have been an accident. And people are reluctant to share them because, the next couch is a psychiatrist. You're a nut job. But, God is breaking through, of course, all the time. So we have Peter and James and John. And now, can you imagine, and you can imagine, don't tell anybody about it. That would have been a hard experience to keep. And why is it that he said, don't tell anybody about it until after I've risen? It's interesting. So how do we bring the mountaintop down? And of course, one of the first things that Jesus does when he gets down, I love the end of the story, there's this father, and he is at his wit's end. And, I was talking to Nathan this morning, and his little boy, Luca, had an event, a medical event at a preschool. And, for parents, this rocks you. And he's on his way. They picked little Luke up, and they're on their way up to the hospital, and they're doing all the tree trimming on Highway 29 right there by Behringer's. And he's stuck in traffic, and he's got his son in the car trying to get to the emergency room. And it's not hard to understand the anguish of a father whose son is being convulsed by a demon. And he's tried everything that he can try. He's gone everywhere that he can go. Knocked on the door of all the disciples. Can you help me? They couldn't. And Jesus said, humanity. What am I going to do with you people? Bring your boy here. And so, he comes down off the mountain and just does what Jesus does, which is make life better. So what is the point really of the Transfiguration? What does it tell us? What is the meaning hidden in it? And it's all about, this story is all about identity, who Jesus was. And that's what it meant. That's what it meant to Jesus. You know, who he was, what he had to do. And the point of the story is Jesus was trying to show us who we are. The radiant face, the voice from heaven, you too. I'm just showing you who you are. Now, the interesting point of the story is the voice that comes from the cloud. That's always the interesting point of the story, the voice that comes from the cloud. And what does the cloud say? It's my son. Listen to him. So that could be, that could be a prayer. You know? Give me ears to hear that voice. Yeah.
Contributions to St. Luke's Episcopal Church help to make the digital ministry and other outreach within the community possible. If it is in your heart to make a donation, St. Luke's secure PayPal link, as well as the church's mailing information, may be found in the description of this video. Thank you.